Hello everyone and welcome to the September 2019, whatever year it is. Welcome to our Quirkos workshop for this month. Today I'm going to show you Quirkos and Quirkos Cloud, a very simple and easy to learn tool for coding and analyzing qualitative data. It's something that you can download with a free trial from our website. If you go to www.quirkos.com and then go to Get Quirkos and download, you can download the full version of the software for free and try it for 28 days. There are no restrictions on the trial version of the software, and it gives you a good sense of whether Quirkos is going to be useful to you, whether it works for your analytical approaches or the way you like to work and analyze data. Most people fall in love with the visual interface very quickly, but it gives you a really good chance to try before you buy. And then we have subscription licenses and one-off licenses, so lots of options for pricing and very cheap student licenses as well. So today I'm going to go through just a very basic overview of setting up a project for the first time and using Quirkos. I'm using it in Linux today actually, but it's absolutely identical in Windows and Mac, so it doesn't matter what your operating system was, which version you've downloaded, it'll all look exactly the same and work in the same way. The files are also compatible across the different versions, so no problem collaborating with other people. Now here I'm actually using the forthcoming cloud version, which gives me a sign-in option, but there's also the option here if you click continue with local storage, which lets you work with offline files, so any projects that you have on your desktop computer or a local network location or a USB stick. But if you go into the cloud, so you can create an account here very easily if you don't have one already. And I'm just going to log into my account. You can also upload local projects into the cloud version. So the cloud version basically works in exactly the same way as the older and offline version, which we're going to keep providing. So don't worry if you're already using the offline version or you're working with confidential data that you can't share on a cloud server. There's no difference in the interface, no difference in the capabilities. The only difference is where it saves the project. So these are my cloud projects. They're in my account. And that means I can access them from any computer. As long as it has an internet connection, any computer in the world, I can log into my Quirkos account and get access to all of my data. And in the future, you'll also be able to do live collaboration with people by sharing a project between different accounts. So I'm going to show you today how you create a new project. As I said, it's exactly the same if you're using the offline version as well. Just click on the new project button here. You get to give it a title, so I'm going to call this smartphone test. You'll see why in a minute. You've got options to password protect the individual project if you want the data encrypted. You can also create structured questions if you're importing data from a survey and asking people exactly the same questions in the same way. But I'm just going to click on new project now. And I have a new project which is called smartphone project. And basically, the layout in Quirkos is split to these two screens. So the blue one on the left, that shows the where we keep the quirks, the themes and codes that we're going to be using in our project. And the source on the right, this is the sources of text that we're going to add into the project. You'll see along the top of the screen, we've got the standard buttons here for doing different things with the project, doing exports and other options. Undo and redo, different views, groups, and the query buttons. There's also a help button here at any stage. That'll also link you back to the full manual, which is online if you want to see any of that. And here we have the settings for the project and also for the display interface. So the first thing I want to do is, now I've created a project, I've got something which I can keep all of my data sources in. So Quirkos only works with text data, but it can bring in text files, PDFs, Word files, and also spreadsheet data. So you'll see along the top it says click to add source. There's a button pointing to the right. I'll click on that and choose import source, select files. So that allows me to choose some files from my computer and import them. What I'm going to do right now is I can bring them in one by one, but I'm actually going to bring in all of these sources. These are basically transcribed semi-structured interviews which I've done with different members of family talking about smartphone addiction and using phones while eating and disrupting family dinner times and family time together. But I also have here, you'll see smartphone article. This is actually a peer-reviewed article which is on smartphone addiction, and I want to kind of compare how my interpretations and my findings from my data are going with the results that I have from my own data, how that's comparing with the published literature. So I'm going to select all 4 of those articles, click on open, and then it will import those and says 4 sources have been successfully imported. So I'll click on OK, good. And you'll see along the top of the screen here we now have 3 tabs, and the tabs let us move between the different sources in the project. If you have more than 3 tabs, you click on this button on the left here, and this shows you all of the different sources in the project. So for example, we can't see Simon's source here, but we can click on that and load that, or we can go to Lynn and have that the most recent. So we load all the sources that we have from this particular file. And we can just click elsewhere to close that view. Click that button also there to close that view, go back to the main screen. So just to make this a little easier for you, you can see I've now got the text of these transcripts and the text here of the smartphone article, so a very long article actually. I'm just going to change here, click on the settings, general project preferences, and just make the text a little bigger so it's easier to see for you guys at home. So now I'm going to show you some of the ways that we can sort and describe those sources of data. So for each of these tabs, which are the tabs of the sources, we have a following one below which shows either the text. There's also this other tab next to it which says toggle source properties view and has a grid icon. Now that tab, that allows us to define source properties, and these are basically ways that we can describe, categorize and sort the sources using absolutely any data or metric that we have. So for example, you can see this is empty at the moment. There's a space here where we can actually change the title of the source. If I click on this plus button here, quickly add a new property. We can add a new property, so in this case it might be the age of our respondent, and this person is 35 years old. Click OK. So now we've created a source property which is called age, and a value for this person, so for Lynn is 35 years old. I'll create one more and we'll call this gender, value female. So we can add as many source properties as we like. They can be numeric, they can be discrete, they can also be multiple choice if you want to have more than one answer for each property. Now when we come to a different source, so for example for Simon's source, you can see we've got this property for age and property for gender, but it says no values associated. Well, we didn't tell Quirkos how old Simon was yet, so we'll click on new value. Simon can be 38 years old. His gender can be male. And so we can do basic data entry in that way. And what this allows us to do is in the future we'll be able to see results, for example, just from people who are over a particular age or a particular gender. But actually in this project it's kind of interesting because we've got 2 different sources of data. So we've got our actual kind of primary data, which is coming from the interviews that we've transcribed, but I've also brought in some literature. So we could do a literature review in Quirkos. It's a very good way to use qualitative analysis software. But what we can also do is categorize the different sources of data we have and keep them all together in the same project. So for example, if I call this source type and put in a value here, which is, this is a journal article. I could also have other properties like journal, TQR, and year, and that could be 2019, I think 2018, I think. So we can very quickly define extra categories which are not necessarily going to apply for all of them. So we don't need to put in age and gender for a journal article, but we do want to put in what the journal is and the year and the author and so on. So we can keep adding them here. But this source type, I'm going to probably have something for everything here. So we've got journal article here. So Simon, that's not a journal article, that's an interview. And another one might come from a focus group, or an email, or something copied and pasted from online. So could come from absolutely anywhere. Interview. So it gives us very different ways that we can be very flexible about playing with the data, exploring the data, and then at the end looking at the connections between the different types and sources of data that we have. So the next thing I'm going to do now is look at the go back to the text of the source. So we're going to go back to Lynn's now, and we're going to look through this and start doing some coding. So we've brought in our sources of data, we've described them in some way. Although we don't have to do the description of the source properties initially, we can do that at any point during the project. But I'm going to create a new theme here. So you see this bubble, this plus button here. So I'll click on that, pop, and it gives us a new category. So this is the code, or the theme, or the node. So this is the thing that we're interested in, finding extracts in the text that are about this particular issue. So for example, this first one, they say, I feel that life with cell phones has made my job as a parent much harder. So maybe one of the themes I'm going to be looking for is role of parent. And I can put a long description in here if it's not clear what that means. That might be obvious. And we can also choose a color here. I mean, there's millions of colors that we can choose. Some kind of green, fine. And now you see we've got this bubble here, which is called role of parent, and it's green. And we can drag and drop to move this anywhere along the canvas, so anywhere where we can see the data. And that allows us to, when we start having lots and lots of codes and themes, make some kind of sense of their arrangement and start grouping them and categorizing them together. So another one we can do here is have one for conflict, because I can see that's coming up now. So that better be, well, let's change that to be red, I think. There we go. So to add some text to one of these sources, all I have to do is click and drag. So I'll take this one here. I feel that life with cell phones has made my job as a parent much harder. So I can click and drag that onto role of parent. And this one, it's become a constant battle with my son to get off the phone doing something else. And that seems to be about conflict, so I'll add that to that theme. And in doing that, you'll see that each of these sections of text has been color-coded to that theme. And it also has this stripe here. And this stripe shows us in the highlights column here what that section of text is about. So for example, if I decided that this was also about conflict and added it to this theme, you see now we've got multiple stripes. So this piece of text has been coded to be about conflict and about the role of parent. And if at any stage we want to review the data under this, we can double click on the conflict bubble. Now that shows us all the excerpts of text which we marked as being about conflict. So it's just these two so far, but we'll have more later. Now any stage in Quirkos, if you want to go back to the main view, hit the home button in the top left screen and you'll always go back to this view. So I'm going to add another theme here, which is called fighting. Probably this is going to be another shade of red, but I want to show you how you can have subcategories of themes. So we have this large theme here, conflict. It's the largest theme because it has the most excerpts of text that we've added to it. So we have conflict here and here, two sections of text. So the size of the bubbles shows you how much text we've added to it. But we can not only just have these one-off codes, we can also start to create subcategories. So we could drop and drag the fighting bubble on there. Now it has a white ring around it, which signifies that there are subcategories. And underneath it, you'll see this theme fighting. So this such a waste of energy because we fight about it and he's angry with me all day. So we'll drag and drop that onto conflict and then onto fighting. So that's now got added to the fighting, and you can see it's a slightly different color. Now actually I want to add this to something else. It was talking about anger here, the word anger appears. So if I want to create some of these codes on the fly, I can actually select some text and then drag and drop it onto the plus button here. And that creates a new theme which is ready with that code, the text of that code already in it. So we call this anger. Purple is fine for anger. And then drag and drop that onto conflict as well. You see now we've got two subcategories of conflict. We've got anger, we've got fighting. We could have other ones. We could have negativity. We could have differences of opinion, depending how we wanted to start playing with and categorizing the data, really. So at this stage, I would go through, keep reading through my text, and then depending on the approach that we've chosen, either we will keep creating these themes on the fly, may create themes ahead of time that we want to use for coding, or we might not want to do any coding at all. So one of the other options we can do is to, for a similar kind of line-by-line coding or an IPA type approach, is to use this button here. So that's the memos feature. And this gives you an extra column here, not just for the coding stripes, but where you can put little notes and comments. So I could do some in vivo coding, for example. So I could drag and drop that text onto the, to add a comment here just by selecting some text and then adding it onto the memos column. And that should be showing us a little comment that we can add to this particular piece of text. And so if we didn't want to do coding, we can go through and we can do line by line analysis in that way. We might want to go and do coding a little later. So I'm going to go back to this approach, and we're going to keep going through reading the text, creating new themes, and this is how we would keep through and doing the coding process. And at any stage we can unselect themes from our subcategories, we can move them around, we can also right click to see a bunch of options including the edit option, so we can change the name, the description and the color. We've also got the undo and redo buttons here, so if we've moved them around, we don't like where they've ended up, we can use the undo and redo buttons to undo the text and coding that we've done. We can also use the view button here to show lots of different things, so anger, conflict, fighting role, so we can put them into alphabetical order. And there's also a list view of the themes as well, which shows them in a list view. And that's really useful if you've got, we deleted them, but if we've got subcategories and even subcategories, it's quite nice to have them all expanded in this particular view. But I'm going to turn that off and go back to the way that we arranged them before. Pull out anger and fighting. So we could keep coding across this. So this could be use of phone. And we can keep going on and coding across these different sources. Now this is what becomes the time-consuming process in any qualitative analysis, and that's going through and coding the data, matching it to different themes, creating a structure to kind of understand the unstructured text that you have from your data sources. But what we can also do to help this process is to search for particular themes and particular words. So for example, we have this word anger, so let's search for anger and see where that comes up. So it seems to only come up once. And it looks like it's coming from the article, the smartphone there. So what I'm going to do is include the synonyms database here. And that lets us look for other themes, other words and expressions which might be related to anger that we can put in here. So angriness, ire, wrath. So let's search for wrath as well. Did anyone use wrath? No. So yeah, there's only this instance of the word anger here. But we can code straight from the search results. We can drag and drop that onto there. We can add anger to that theme as well. So that's coded in the smartphone article as well. And what we can do now is we can start at any stage to review those. So for example, if we double click on the anger bubbles we've seen before, we've got this subcategory here for anger and fighting. So we'll click on fighting, such a waste of energy because we fight about it. And here's the theme for anger. And if we unclick, so that's everything which is about anger and fighting. But we can also use some of the tools in Quirkos to explore the differences between the different sources that we have. So if you remember, we created those source properties earlier. We've got this ability here to do queries. If we click on the query button here, that allows us to do searches across different properties and different aspects of the data that we have in the project. So for example, one of the things we had was the source type, and we've got journal article. So if we click on update for that, so now these are just the things which we found in the journal articles. But we can also split the screen in half with a comparison view, and we can choose source type here and interview. And if we update that as well, okay, so now we've got, here's what people said about anger in the interviews on the right. Here's what people said about anger in the journal article. So we can actually compare the results of our data with data and findings which is in the literature review. So it's very useful in this way to be able to show comparisons and contrasts between the different sources of data. So I'll go back to the home view here, and I'll just quickly show you some of the other themes and other tools that we have. So if I click on the export button here, there's lots of different ways that you can share data about the project. One of those is the word cloud. Now that does basically a frequency analysis of all the different occurrences of words in the project, and visualizes it in this kind of fun way. So smartphone, use, technology, parents, when, children. Okay, so it's not entirely surprising which themes are coming up here, but of course a lot of these will be coming from the smartphone article, and we can untick that source. Now this is just the words which are in the our sources of data. So we've got phone, just, really, it's me, time, friends. So lots of options to customize this. You've also got a list here of all the different words which are in the project. So the occurs 520 times, for example. We'll also see smartphone, technology, parents. Those are very commonly occurring words, and that's kind of interesting. So that's one of the export options. We also have a report which you can generate. This full report kind of has a lot of information about the codes in the project, the different sources, who did the work in the project, and it's fully customizable. So we have all these different sections, including graphs which show us the source properties, so how many people were male and female in this project, or what the different source types were. And then we've got these canvas views, so these show us the different things, our coding structure that we created. And below that we've also got, so here's the text, so here's everything about conflict, about the role of parent, but we can also organize that in different ways, customize the layout with all these options here. When we're happy with that, we can save it as a Word file or as a PDF file, and then we can share that with someone else. The other export options that we have here, so we can create Word document exports. So we can actually get our transcripts back out as a Word file. And what that will do is let us see the output of all of our transcripts back again, but with these as a standard Word document, and with these kind of color-coded highlights which show us the how we've coded and interpreted that data. So if I can just find that file. Okay, so here's our transcripts back out again, and we've got these color-coded themes and extracts here. So we've got, here's the lin, so here's the one that we did lots of coding. It shows who did the coding and when, and what theme it was. So it's really nice to be able to go away from the computer at this stage, print it out, share with someone else, and know that you can always go back to the data in Quirkos as it's coded. The other options we have here, we can also export as spreadsheet data. So we can bring our coded data into Excel to do more analysis, especially quantitative analysis, as Quirkos doesn't have a lot of qualitative analysis features built in. You can also export it as a QDPX file. So Quirkos supports a standard format, which means that you can import and export from various different software packages, so in Vivo, Atlas TI, Transana, F4 Analyze, etc., etc. They all support this standard, so you'll be able to move simple projects in and out of them. And you can also save the project with just the sources of data if you want to apply a different framework to them, or just the structure. So if you've got a standard template that you want to use to code and explore other sources of data. Okay, so that's basically all that I'm going to go through today at this stage. It's a very basic overview of just how to get started in the project. All of this was done in the cloud. We can download projects from the cloud, we can give it new names, we can merge projects, and we can open lots and lots of different projects. There's no limit to the number of projects you can store on the cloud. But again, it's absolutely identical to the offline version, and you can also download files and upload files between the cloud and your own file. So that's launching at the end of the month. We're very excited about the cloud version and how that's going to make things a lot easier for people who work remotely and move to lots of different locations and work collaboratively on collaborative qualitative analysis projects. We're going to show you a lot more later in the month. But thanks for tuning in for this workshop. As always, do contact us via email or on our website if you've got any questions. So you can contact us through here, through the support page. And there's lots of other tutorials, manuals, and video guides, which will help you learn the software. There's also frequently asked questions, and you can download full manuals and things like that from any of the pages on our website. So really great to have you along here, and do download Quirkos from quirkos.com and give it a try. Thanks very much for joining us.